What is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Thursday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I'm your host, Josh Harris. Cold, snowy day in New Jersey. I don't know if our pal, he works for Stochastic, Nathan, he's the guy who gets us set up in StreamYard. He sent us a question on Slack that I just saw. I'm going to answer you if you're watching. It's about team pace of play. I will answer you. Sorry if you're watching, but yeah. Last night, 4-gamer was a bit interesting. Mathematikas Matthews is back. He scored 2 goals, had a block bonus, 7 shots on goal. He looked good. I think some things we knew about Warren Foegele came true yesterday. Like, I think of the players Edmonton lost, I guess you can argue Broberg, but Warren Foegele, one of the biggest losses for Edmonton. He looked good in the Kings bottom 6 last night.
Yeah. It's funny to see him start to get notoriety because I've been a fan of his for going back to before the pandemic. They basically just swapped Foegele for Arvidsson, which I like Arvidsson, but I don't know. Fogel's a decent two-way winger. Can pop 20 goals, like that kind of stuff. But yeah, he that third line did well. I mentioned this, I think, on Twitter a couple of days ago, but Austin Matthews had kind of a slow start to the season, and then he got injured. He hasn't had one of those hot streaks yet, where he scores 22 goals in 20 games or something like that. That's coming, and considering how good Toronto has looked to start the season, I think that's a little bit terrifying for the rest of the Eastern Conference. But we have 9 games on the docket here tonight. Some interesting matchups. There are definitely some lopsided matchups. There's another Colorado-Carolina game, redux from a couple weeks ago. It was the last week. I mean, they all run together. Our boys are in Edmonton to face the Oilers, who are getting Zach Hyman back. So lots of intrigue on the slate. Couple key injury notes. We'll get to all of that as we get through the show.
I see the grammar police early in here. Is this the day you'll stop saying cedar for cider? No. You want to know why? The year he got drafted, when he got drafted 5th overall and everyone looked shocked, including him, he was like, why am I getting picked right now? The announcers were saying cedar. So that's why we say cedar. If it's cider, I'll try to put it in my memory bank. I don't really know, but we'll try. But we have a 9-gamer tonight. Perfetti? It's not Perfetti instead of Perfetti. What can you do? I'm from New Jersey. The accent comes out. At least I don't talk with my hands. We have a 9-game slate tonight. Let's get into it. Before we do, just wanted to say thank you all for being here, supporting us with the affiliate links, telling me that I cannot pronounce hockey names, which is true. I'm not hating on you. It's true. But, I am who I am. We're not going to change who I am. But thank you for being here. Thank you for liking the show. Thank you for watching. We'll never force you to go premium, but if you do want to go premium, you can click that link in the chat that the Stochastic bot put in there. And by bot, my index finger. Just click that. Use promo code Stochastic15. That'll get you 15% off any subscription for your first week or month. Doesn't even have to be NHL. Can be any of the sports. Really good pay-per-view this weekend in MMA. So if you're interested in that, check that out. Maybe I'll surprise everybody with a quick picks video. Look what I just did. Making the bar too high. Let's get into the slate before I commit to doing a 3-hour live show from Madison Square Garden or something. Winnipeg Jets with a 2.9 total heading into Buffalo. The Skinny Swords have a 2.6. Rasmus Dahlin out. That's a rather grande loss. We'll talk about defensemen at the end, but I would imagine this gives Bowen Byram a pretty big bump. Not that this is the matchup for it. Buffalo going Thompson, Tuck, Zucker, Peterka, Cousins, Benson, McLeod, Kulich, Quinn. That top line, Thompson, Tuck, Zucker, fully correlated Winnipeg mercifully going back to Connor Scheifele, Velarde, Cole Perfidi, Vladislav Nemestikov, and Brad Lambert. I guess they added Brad Lambert into the player pool after our show the other night. Not that it made a difference. This is one of 3 or 4, 2 or 5.5 totals on the slate. I'm not super into this game in single entry or 3 max. Winnipeg doesn't have the best penalty kill. Connor Scheifele, Velarde, not the best defensively. Thompson, Tuck, Zucker, fully correlated. 8.7% top 2 stack, 4.1% projected ownership. If you're 20 maxing, 150 maxing, if you get to some Buffalo 1 here, I'm okay with it. I don't like that Rasmus Dahlin's out. I think that hurts the power play. Bowen Byram's a nice player, and he's a nice fill-in for Rasmus on the power play. I just don't think he's Rasmus Dahlin. So I'm kind of mum on it at 17.6. If you get there, you get there. I'm not prioritizing them anyway. That second line is a filler at 12.3. They're okay, but the power play correlation is a mess. Paterka's on the second unit, Cousins on the first unit. Benson's either on the second unit or not even on a unit. So they're fine as a filler. The more lineups you get to, I'm not really prioritizing them. And on the Winnipeg side, the only line I really care about is that top line. It is a flowchart special because they are overpriced on the road at 19.8, but no one's playing them. So the flowchart says play them. That's more of an MME type deal because 19.8 on the road with a 2.9 total isn't exactly screaming play me. So, if you get to them, if I was making 20 lineups, I'd have one of 20, Winnipeg 1. You know what I mean? This game's more of an MME type deal. If I had to play line, single entry would be Buffalo 1, but I don't think I'll get there.
Yeah, I'm kind of nervous. Like 2 weeks ago, I would have been probably pretty in on the Winnipeg top line. Winnipeg got shelled the other night by St. Louis. Now, it was only, I think, a 4-1 game, but St. Louis was in control of that game. And we talked about on the show on Tuesday how Dylan DeMello has been pretty bad this year, and he's sinking that top pair for Winnipeg. And Dylan Sandberg had a huge positive impact on Neil Pionk on the second pair, and Sandberg is hurt, and he's been out for 5 games now. And of course, Nikolai Ehlers is still out, which takes their best play driving forward out of the lineup. Certainly the best play driving forward outside the top line. With DeMello playing as he is, with Sandberg out, it's basically Josh Morrissey and a bunch of guys on defense, right? Like there was really no one. Like DeMello 2 years ago would have been solid. DeMello of the last year and a half, absolutely not. So I worry about, can they move the puck? Do they just spend a bunch of time in their own zone? Winnipeg 1 is certainly good enough to get there regardless. And the thing about the power play is like losing Ehlers, I don't think it really hurts them that much. Like if you look at the goal scoring over the last few years with and without Ehlers on the top power play unit, like Kyle Connor and Gabriel Velarde have much bigger impacts than Ehlers does. So I don't think it hurts the power play that much. I think this is going to be a pretty poor 5-on-5 team until DeMello gets better, they replace him with someone better, and Sandberg gets back. Winnipeg 1, I think, is fine to play. You talked about their top 2 stack, not much ownership, 0.6%. There are a bunch of lines in that price range here tonight. There are 7 lines between like 18K and the upper range. This would not be one of my favorite lines to play in that range. That's just kind of the way that I look at it. I think Cole Perfidi is fine as a one-off. Like the Buffalo depth really hasn't been that great. And of course you take out Dahlin and it kind of hurts everybody else. Perfidi's only 3,200. Like Buffalo's penalty kill is not that good. I do think that a one-off Perfidi, if you need a cheap one-off, it makes a lot of sense here. Stacking from Winnipeg, I don't think I'm in. I think I'd be more interested in the Buffalo side. Losing Dahlin, I think, hurts them more at 5-on-5 than it does on the power play. Like I think Owen Power can still run a pretty good power play for them. Winnipeg's penalty kill has been good, fine, certainly not elite or anything. It is a perfectly correlated top line now, and that's something that Buffalo's top line hasn't had basically all season. And 17,600, only 4% ownership. Like, that has interest to me. Because they're not super expensive. You can put in another mid-price stack with them. You can pay up for an expensive defenseman. There are a lot of expensive defensemen worth paying up for here tonight. I'm not worried about any of the matchups on the Winnipeg side. Like I said, that top pair with DeMello playing the way that he is not good. The second pair with Dylan Sandberg out is not good. The third pair with Logan Stanley playing is not good. Like, this is not a good defense group outside of Josh Morrissey. If Connor Hellebuck saves like 34, 35 shots, has a great game, like, so be it. I think there are reasons to play Buffalo 1 here. If you want to dip down to Buffalo 2 as a filler, I think that's fine. Cousins still getting the power play time. Peterka, he's still, even if he's not getting top power play, he's still a great 5-on-5 player. Again, not worried about matchups, but I think it's Buffalo 1 that I like best in this game, and I actually like them. They're one of the lines that I'm definitely considering in my stack here tonight.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not super, like, they're on my list for single entry 3 max. I don't think I'm going to get to Buffalo. It's just like clicking in the Buffalo Sabres in a 5.5. They have a 2.6 road total. It's just like, I don't know, man. Like, there's a couple lines in the next game I think I'd rather play, so let's get to that. Nashville Predators with a 3.1 heading into Montreal. The Line A's have a 2.8. Holy moly, man. That, like, I know Line A might be a power play dependent type player, but that was an absolute piss missile. That goal was disgusting.
Yeah. Just didn't one time it, held onto it for a sec and just whipped it off the post. And I was like, oh God, it's good to have you back.
The goalie turned after the puck bounced out of the net. Like,
yeah,
that's going to be like, he just plop him in Ovi's office and let him do that on the power play. Who cares what he does at 5-on-5? I mean, like, he is the quintessential Montreal Canadian. All gas, no brakes.
Yeah.
Anyway, this game is nice. I like this game. Nationals back-to-back on the road, and their top line's getting a lot of ownership. 6.6% top 2 stack, 12.1% projected ownership. They're down to 14,100. They're cheaper than the Montreal top line. Going through this slate, I had to go look up the definition of insanity. It's like doing the same thing over and over again. Eventually, this line's going to do something. They have too big of a history of being good to be this bad. And it's a shooting percentage thing. It's not like their underlying metrics are falling off a cliff like Mika Zibanejad. They're creating, they're just not finishing. It's a really, really good power play matchup. I know it's back-to-back on the road and they have negative leverage. And will I get there in single entry? I honestly don't think so, but like, there's a reason they're negatively leveraged despite being back-to-back on the road on a 9-game slate, is because they're 14,100 in an elite power play matchup. It's not an excellent 5-on-5 matchup. Like, that Suzuki Newhook Caulfield line actually has been pretty good by, Canadian standards. But like, man, if you need a mid-range line here, how do you not go to Nashville 1 here? And I'll answer that question for you. It wasn't rhetorical. I think you could go to Montreal 1 here. Caulfield, Suzuki, Newhook at 15,000, 3.8% top 2 stack, 2.7% projected ownership. That line in a 70-minute sample has been very, very good with Newhook up there. I'm a little bit confused why no one's playing them. Nashville back-to-back on the road. They've been really iffy defensively. Like, Brady Shea's having a pretty bad season. It's probably going to be Justice and Newen in net. Like, their penalty kill has been pretty good, but like, without Saros, like, that's going to take a hit. I really like Montreal 1 here. I think you leave Newhook on. He's cheap enough where he hits the score sheet once, you're laughing. You want to go to Montreal 2 here, Doc Slavkovsky Line for 10,700, 1.5% top two, 0.9% top two stack, 1.5% projected ownership. Like, I'm fine with them as a filler if you're looking to power play stack an expensive team. Like, if this was a better power play matchup, I would, be like, yeah, let's play some Montreal 2. But I'm more in on Montreal 1 here. Nashville 1 is scary that they're chalky because they are so overdue to absolutely annihilate a slate. And if they're going to do it at 14,100 and over-owned, I'll just close the laptop if I don't play them. You know what I mean? So both top lines in this game.
Yeah. To back up your point about that Nashville top line, 175 minutes together this season, 3.1 expected goals, 72 shot attempts per 60, 1.3 actual goals, shooting just over 4%. I do think there's something to the low shooting percentage, the way that they're running their offense. Like, if you look at Nashville last year, they created a lot from the slot net front type areas. This season, it's a lot of perimeter shots, shots from the face-off dots, shots from the blue line, those types of things, but they're just generating a lot. It honestly reminds me of like the Carolina Hurricanes for most of the last 5 years. But eventually, yes, they will break through. They're not going to shoot 4% for the whole season. I will say, keep an eye on warm-ups, right? This is a back-to-back. They did lose last night, and they lost in spectacular fashion. Let's not forget that. Nashville was up 1-0 at the start of the third period and was down 3-1 5 minutes in. It wouldn't surprise me if they broke up their lines. But, if Nashville 1 is together, I'm definitely tempted. They are so cheap. Still play heavy minutes. Like, even Gustav Nyquist is still getting 18, 19 minutes, even without top power play time. And he's not a big penalty killer. So it's a lot of even strength time. I do like Nashville 1 here. If you're going to play a chalky mid-price line, I think this is one that I would certainly target. Nashville 2, like, I'm not that concerned about the matchups in the middle of Montreal's lineup for Nashville. I think those are good matchups for the Predators. I worry that Stamkos and Marchessault haven't really been that good this season. 2.8 expected goals per 60. They haven't scored in their minutes together without Tommy Novak as their center. It was Mark Jankowski last night. It has been Colton Sissons at times. They just haven't been able to figure out that second line. I think I would play the Nashville top line. They're in consideration for me, especially if I'm not minding playing the chalk here tonight. The Montreal side, I think it's Montreal 1 for me. The reason is like Doc and Slavkovsky really aren't shooters. Doc, without a power play role, he just doesn't bring a lot fantasy-wise. Honestly, he's like Michael Granlund before last season. You know what I mean?
Pittsburgh Michael Granlund.
Yeah, Pittsburgh Michael Granlund, 1.5 shots per game. In a good year, will put up 30, 40 assists or something like that. But that, it's just not enough for DFS. I think I would go Montreal 1. You mentioned how good that top line has been. Only 70 minutes together. So we're talking, maybe like 6 games. It's not a lot, 5-6 games. But 3.4 expected goals, 4.3 actual goals per 60 minutes. They're all skating 17 to 19 minutes. I think you're right. You can just leave Newhook on because he is so cheap. You don't need a lot from him, an assist and a couple shots, and you're fine. I would be tempted to put Line A on instead of Newhook because the line is still only 16,900 if you make that swap. And while Nashville's penalty kill has generally been good, a lot of it is save percentage, like a 930 save percentage over the last month on the PK. Like, that'll paper over a lot of things, and it's not UC Saros starting. And they have been one of the more penalized teams in the league. I was looking at over the last 31 days, second most penalties taken per game over the last 31 days, and the most of any team on the slate. So Montreal might be able to draw a bunch of power plays here tonight. I'd be tempted to put on Line instead of Newhook. I think I like the Montreal side better, but it's both top lines for me in this game. I'm not interested so much in the depth.
Yeah. Lovely game. Detroit Red Wings with a 2.7 total heading into Ottawa. The Senators have a 3.4 total. I was looking at this game yesterday and I was like, oh, yes. can play Tkachuk with Gaudette. They've been nasty together. They've been so good. Gaudette's on the fourth line. Got to play Josh Norris. Now they're the third most expensive line in the night once, after Colorado won and Edmonton won. And I'd just normally be like, I don't want to play a $20,000 Ottawa line. But they're playing the Wings. The Wings suck. Patty Kane's back. It makes them worse defensively. Once you get past the Moritz Cider pairing, there's nothing there on the blue line. Like, Ottawa won 20,200, 14.1% top two stack, 6.6% projected ownership. Like, fully correlated. Like, we can slander Norris as much as we want here. The fact of the matter is he's on power play 1 and he plays 19, 20 minutes. And it's the Wings. So you have to consider Ottawa 1 here. Just by default. Like, Ottawa 2's okay at 14,400, but you only get Stützle on the top power play unit, get Giroux on the second unit, and Grieg isn't even on a unit. At that point, at 14.4, I'm going to go save $300, play Nashville 1, or find an extra 600 and go play Montreal 1. You know what I mean? So, like, I think it's Ottawa 1 for me, fully correlated against the Wings. I don't really want to, but, like, the matchup is great. I'll throw my bias for Norris aside. Like, I think they're in play in single entry. On the wing side, Larkin, Raymond, Rasmussen, 14,000 over owned. Like, what is this game? Like, I want to use this game sucks, but there are a lot more sucky games after this. So, like, I can't use it here. I think like a one-off Raymond or a one-off Larkin is fine. I prefer one-off Raymond, one-off DeBrincat, something like that. I don't think I'm going to full stack anything from the Wings or prioritize them in single entry. It's Ottawa 1 for me, and it makes me a little upset that Gaudette was on the top line. They were excellent, and they just fucking nuked him to the fourth line. Thank you, Travis Green.
Yeah, the reason you have to consider Ottawa here is because that top line is perfectly correlated, and this is a really good power play spot. And Ottawa's power play has generally been very good this year. It's the one thing that's been pretty consistent for them for most of the season is their power play. And a perfectly correlated power play against the Detroit Red Wings. Like the Detroit Red Wings, like holy hell, their power play or their penalty kill has been atrocious for a while now. Since November 1st, I think by goals against, they're last in the league, goals against per minute. That's not ideal, to say the least. And it is Ville Husso going back in net. He's just not been good this year. Wasn't good last year. Had one good year. Like, he's just one of those goalies. That's why you have to kind of consider Ottawa here, is because it is a really good power play spot. They are perfectly correlated. They're all going to play like 18 plus minutes. Even if Tkachuk only plays like 17, he just shoots so much. He's a pretty big threat for the shot bonus anyway. But like at over 20K, I'm going to be honest, I would probably rather just go play Edmonton, and we'll get to the Oilers later. If I'm going to pay over 20K for a line here tonight, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Edmonton and not the Ottawa Senators. But it is a good power,
Michael.
Yeah, it is a good power play spot, though. I can't deny that. So I've no issue with playing Ottawa 1 because of the special teams matchup, but they're definitely not a target of mine. And I will say, Tkachuk and Norris, not that good this year. 2.6 expected goals, 2.9 actual goals per 60 at 5-on-5. Like, it's above average, but it's not great by any stretch of the imagination. I think I would have more interest in the Detroit side, to be honest. I know. That's not to say that I have a lot of interest. It's to say that I have more interest. And those are two different things. So
not mutually exclusive.
So, Larkin and Raymond have been finishing pretty well. They haven't been generating a ton, but they haven't really been generating a ton all year. Ottawa does take their fair share of penalties. Their penalty kill can struggle. The Detroit power play has generally been very good this year. They are only 14K. I do wonder about that perfect correlation now that Patrick Kane is back. That kind of worries me a little bit. I do think they're a pivot to go to if you don't want to play a super chalky Nashville or something like that in that price range. I guess I like the Ottawa side better here. But again, it's one of those situations where just because, in a nutshell, because they have the 3.4 total, I do like the Ottawa side better. I think considering the $6,000+ drop off from Ottawa 1 to Detroit 1, I'd have more interest in playing the Red Wings here tonight. But generally speaking, I don't think I'm going to have a stack out of this game.
Yeah, I mean, like, if it was Stützle, Kachuk, Batherson for like 21 and change or whatever it was, I'd have more interest in that than I would with Norris there. Like, Norris sucks, but he has a role, and you have to consider it, but he sucks. Let's move on before I start turning all shades of colors. San Jose Sharks with a 2.5 total heading into Tampa Bay. The Lightning have a 3.9 total. Kucherov and Mitchell Chaffee are out. They still have a 3.9 total. It looks like they're going to go 11-7. There wasn't a definitive update on that, but it seems likely with Chaffee out that they're going to go 11-7. As it is, the top six in the top stacks are Point, Gensel, Gonclaves, Hagel, Cirelli, Paul. Sharks going Celebrini, Zetterlund, Eklund, Toffoli, Wenberg, Cunnin, Granlund, Smith, Costin. Luke Cunnin, Klim, Costin. Why are we doing that to each other? I don't have a ton of interest on the Sharks here, like almost none. Like, that top line is overowned. They're 13-5. They're not really generating a ton. I see people on Twitter saying Celebrini's better than Bedard. I have a headache. I think a Celebrini one-off is fine. I don't really want to full stack anything from the Sharks. You want to go Wenberg to Foley for a two-man that's on the power play. That's fine. But other than that, I'm out on the Sharks. It's what to do with Tampa, right? Because Point and Gensel are both 7,400 each. Cirelli's 5,400. Hagel 69. Cirelli moves up to the top power play unit with Kucherov out. It's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because Gensel hasn't been shooting the puck a lot with Kucherov in. With Kucherov out, he's probably going to shoot the puck more. That being said, the two-man of Hagel and Cirelli is $2,500 cheaper and less owned than Point Gensel. Cirelli and Hagel have a really good sample together this year, no matter who they play with, including Kucherov. They do slide a little bit defensively with Kucherov, but with Paul there, it is what it is. I'm in on Cirelli Hagel. You want to add in one of Point Gensel to make it a really expensive power play stack because this is a excellent power play stack. High five. But if I'm going to play, a couple guys from this game on the power play, it's going to be Cirelli Hagel. That's just a personal preference. If I were you, I would focus on the power play guys and make some sort of power play stack. For me, it's Cirelli Hagel. But I think you can do whatever you want with the power play guys on Tampa. Not too much interest on the Sharks outside of Celebrini or Wenberg Toffoli.
So I'm kind of at a loss here with what to do with Tampa because obviously this is a really good spot. The Sharks, the games where they're keeping the goals against down, it's largely because like Mackenzie Blackwood stops 42 of 43 shots or something like that. It's not necessarily that they're playing well defensively. The Sharks penalty kill, not that good. Obviously losing Kucherov is a big loss. Hagel and Cirelli have been great this season at 5-on-5 without Kucherov next to them. So whether it's Nick Paul, whoever rotates in, because when they go 11-7, it doesn't really matter. They can drive the play extremely well. Gensel and Point are good enough to do well even without Kucherov. It's one of those things like if this was, Carolina in town or the Los Angeles Kings in town or the Florida Panthers in town or something like that, or even Boston at this point, I'd be like, maybe I don't have a lot of interest in Tampa, but this is still a great matchup. And they have a 3.9 total and it stayed a 3.9 total since this morning before Kucherov was announced out. So like there's still a lot of goals expected here. As to what to do, like, I think I kind of agree with you. I would rather go Hagel and Cirelli as a two-man, add in Paul or whatever if you want. They are cheap at 16,100. Without Kucherov in the lineup, Cirelli's going to be on the top power play unit. Those guys are going to play 20-plus minutes. Now, Gensel and Point probably will as well, but they're also more expensive. I would probably go back to Tampa too. I still have a lot of interest in Tampa here tonight. Maybe I wouldn't say more so without Kucherov, but it's nice to not have to make that decision of, do I want to play a $24,000 line that's in a prime smash spot here? You can actually make a decision based on reasonably priced lines, and they're coming in over owned, but nothing extreme, like 11.8% on the second line, 14.3% on the top line. I would probably focus on the power play guys because it is a good power play matchup, but yeah, I still have interest in Tampa no matter what. The San Jose side, man, somebody brought up a pretty good point to me the other day that I honestly hadn't realized, is that Andrei Vasilevsky has been not good since he returned last year. Remember, he had back surgery before the season started last year, missed 6 weeks or whatever it was, came back. Goals saved above expected amongst the 32 regular starting goalies over the last 2 seasons, season and a half or whatever. Of the 32 regular starting goalies, his goal saved above expected per minute is 28th. 28th. He is between Sam Ersson and Elvis Merzlikins.
That's great company.
That's not, it's still better than Jonas Johansson, which is why Vasilevsky keeps getting the starts. But it's not as if like this is the Vasilevsky of 4 or 5 years ago, right? So when I look at San Jose, I imagine that Celebrini sees a fair bit of that Hagel Cirelli line. I'm kind of intrigued on going to Wenberg and Toffoli here because Wenberg and Toffoli, they do get power play time. 2.6 expected goals, 3.5 actual goals per 60 in their minutes together. They're high event, like they're actually generating a lot of shots, or a good amount of shots anyway. I'm kind of interested in the two-man of Toffoli and Wenberg here. I'm not going to lie to you because I'm not concerned about the matchup on the Tampa side, especially because I don't think they see much of the Cirelli line. They get power play time. Vasilevsky's not that great. 2.5 total isn't high, but it's not nothing. They're not expensive. I think a one-off Toffoli, if you don't want to play Wenberg, is just fine. I have a little bit of interest in that San Jose too, but obviously, generally speaking, I have a lot more interest in the Tampa side.
Yeah. Florida Panthers, the 3.3 total. Heading into Philadelphia, the Flyers have a 2.7. We don't have confirmation on the Florida lines, and that is kind of important for this game because in the third period of the last game, Florida went to Barkov, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, and then Bennett, Tkachuk, Bachquist, and Evan Rodriguez is down in the bottom 6. And all the Florida beat writers said today was same lineup as last game. Thanks. Right? Because that really changes things if they go to Bennett, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk compared to Barkov, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, because that line's fully correlated. And it's Ivan Fedotov in net. Like, you can say whatever you want about Couturier, Konechny, Farabee if they stay together. Like, Couturier and Konechny have been fairly decent this season, but like it's Ivan Fedotov in net. If Carter Verhaeghe is on the top line and they're fully correlated with Barkov and Reinhart, one, no one's going to know about it until warmups. And two, that is a really, really good line in a really, really good spot. So I would have a lot of interest in that line. If they revert back to their old lines, I would have less interest as a whole. Like, I would still like both lines. Like, if they go Barkov, Reinhart, Rodriguez, Bennett, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk, like, I'm fine with that. And you can play either one. Like, it's a preference. I'd lean Barkov, Reinhart. But, like, if they go Barkov, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, I would have a lot of interest in that line because they're fully correlated and no one would really know about it until 6:35 p.m. Eastern or whatever. And you'd probably get a pretty low owned combination. So, like, as much as I really want to break this game down for you, like, it is very dependent on where Carter Verhaeghe is skating. Again, the too long didn't read version if Verhaeghe is on the Barkov line with Reinhart, very much interested. If they revert back to their old lines, I have interest, and you can play either of the top two lines, but I would not be as interested as a Barkov, Reinhart, Verhaeghe line. On the Flyers side, it's a pretty tough matchup. If anything, I'll go to Couturier, Konechny, Farabee, but like I'm not full stacking the Flyers. You want to one off Travis Konechny, that's fine. Owen Tippett, that's fine. Like honestly, I think it would just be Konechny in this game, and I'll just move along. It's a tough matchup. The goaltender matchup is not great in this game, but like Florida is good defensively, so I'd save it to Konechny one off. And Florida is very dependent on where Carter Verhaeghe's skating.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's tough to recommend anything from Florida until we know what the lineup looks like. You know, the beat writer said no lineup changes from last game. Obviously, that doesn't help considering they had a lineup change for the entire third period. I would have a little interest in Florida too, even if Verhaeghe's on the top line for two reasons. One, like the Flyers penalty kill has actually been good. It was last year. It's been good again this year. The other is obviously just avoiding Konechny and Couturier. I feel like Matt Tkachuk could probably run all over those second and third lines. You know, he could run all over a Morgan Frost, Matvey Michkov second line. Like he's just good enough to do that. We just have to see what warmups look like. In a nutshell, like I would rather play Florida. If Verhaeghe's on the top line, I'd rather play them than like Winnipeg. I'd rather play them than Ottawa. But I do think there are a couple other expensive lines elsewhere on the board that we'll get to that I would have a little bit more interest in here tonight. So I think I'd have a little bit more interest in Florida, like a Tkachuk one-off. You know, Bachfist, if he's on the second line, like he's cheap enough, you can do like a Bachfist Tkachuk two-man or something like that. That's kind of where I am on Florida. On the Philly side, I have a little interest in the Flyers top line. You know, they have been pretty good this season. 4.2 expected goals for, 2.4 against per 60 minutes at 5-on-5 with Farabee there. It doesn't really matter who's been on the other side. They've been pretty good no matter what. Going to be honest, I'd rather Sergei Bobrovsky was in net because he's been much, much worse than Spencer Knight has been this season. Spencer Knight's actually been solid. You know, what worries me is that the Flyers power play hasn't been good. If you look at the power play success the Flyers have had this season, it's basically come at 5-on-3 or in overtime. And those situations don't happen a lot. They've just been happening, you know, be fortunate in a couple of those situations. Like at 5-on-4 during regulation, the power play is still bad. And Florida's penalty kill has been on a slide. It's kind of the one weakness that they've had. So if the Flyers can't generate much on the power play, like I don't think that they're going to generate a lot at 5-on-5. You know, one-off Konechny, I say, is always in play. He plays so many minutes. Like a one-off Michkov, because he's only 3,700, I think is okay. Farabee's on the top line. He's 2,800. If you need a punt-type winger, I think he's fine as well. He's pretty good at generating shots and quality chances, and he's in a spot to do that on the top line. I don't think I have a lot of interest in stacking the Flyers here tonight, generally speaking.
Yeah. Generally speaking, I don't have a ton of interest in ever stacking the Flyers. But, you know, Colorado Avalanche with a 3 total heading into Carolina. The Hurricanes have a 3.5. It says a lot if you have a 3 total going into Carolina. Top line, Rantanen, McKinnon, Lehkonen, fully correlated. The issue is they're 24,400, and they're going to be facing the Stahl line with Jarvis. And the Stahl line with Jarvis has been very, very good this season. Under 1.5 expected goals against per 60 and almost 100-minute sample. In single entry, like, I don't think I'm getting to Colorado at all here. It's hard to get there when you can play Edmonton against Columbus. I almost said even Ottawa, but like I think I would rather just play Colorado against the Stahl line than play Josh Norris. In MMA, it's a different story because yes, Pyotr Kochetkov is back, and yes, they're facing the Stahl line, but that McKinnon line with Rantanen and Lehkonen, very, very good. Not surprising. And McKinnon has been starting to shoot the puck more. Kochetkov is their best goalie right now, but he's not, lights out by any means. I think in MME, Colorado 1 makes for an intriguing contrarian spend-up option. They have a 24.4% top 2 stack, 4.2% projected ownership. It's hard to prioritize them in single entry for the reasons I just mentioned, but I think, getting a little bit over the field in 20 or 150 max really is something that I would consider. Just, McKinnon's a matchup-proof line. They're fully correlated. So, this is one of the worst matchups possible. But, again, every time I think it's the worst matchup possible, I remember a few seasons ago we recommended McDavid going into Boston against the Bergeron line, and he scored twice. So, anything can happen here. It's hard to prioritize them in single entry, but I do think I would consider them an MME. The Carolina side is where I am focusing, though, and Aho Svechnikov Roslovic at 18,100 is where I am focused. 6.3% top 2 stack, 2.1% projected ownership. They have been excellent so far this season. They're going to face the middle six of Colorado and Scott Wedgwood, who is their best goalie option. I will repeat that. Scott Wedgwood in net is their best goalie option. So, I am interested in Carolina 1 here. They're on my list in single entry. You want to go to Carolina 2, I think I would do a Netchus one-off or pair him with Eric Robinson. But Carolina 1 for me. Carolina 3 is interesting because Stahl, Martinook, Jarvis going to pretty much wet blanket McKinnon all night. So they might play 18, 19 minutes. And that McKinnon line has been trading chances. That Jarvis, Martinook, Stahl line has been very good this season at both ends of the ice. For 11-3, I don't mind them as a filler.
Yeah, I don't mind Carolina 3 here tonight either, just for the exact reasons that you mentioned, is that I think they're going to play a lot against the McKinnon line. I think Jarvis might hit 18, 19, but, certainly Stahl and Martinook could get to 16 minutes easily here tonight. And they have been very good at both ends of the ice. I'd say, obviously a lot better defensively than offensively. And the McKinnon line, you mentioned the trading chances, 3.6 expected goals for, 3.2 against per 60 minutes. That is extremely high event hockey going both ways. Don't mind Carolina 3 as a filler. It is Carolina 1 that I like best in this game. They're going to go up against those second and third lines from Colorado. Not worried about that. 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play unit. Carolina's power play has been excellent. I think you're fine to take off Roslovic and put on Jarvis or something like that. Make it more of a power play stack because the Colorado penalty kill is really not like Detroit struggled this year, but certainly hasn't been that good. So I do think Carolina 1 is the team or is the line that I like best. Carolina 3 is fine as a filler. Probably out on Colorado. I don't have a problem playing them because they're not going to get a ton of ownership. But I think if I'm going to spend up here tonight, it would be the Florida top line or Edmonton instead, rather than playing Colorado. It's not as if they're coming in with 1% ownership. They'll probably be 5% or above. So I think a one-off Nichushkin still makes a lot of sense because he gets power play time and he'll get softer second and third line matchups, or softer depth matchups, I should say. But it is Carolina 1 I like best from this game.
Yeah. Got a new top stacks around new top 2, new highest top 2 stack percentage is the new Edmonton 1 line, which is $100 cheaper than Ottawa 1, by the way. But we'll get there when we get there. Let's get to this game sucks of the evening. Seattle Kraken with a 2.6 total heading into New York Islanders, or heading into Long Island. That sucks. The Islanders have a 2.9 total. I'll be brief on this game. If you're power play stacking the Lightning, the Oilers, the Avs, I think you could play a 2-man of Wright Bjorkstrand, Wright Tolvanen, something like that. Other than that, I'm out on Seattle. I'm really out on the Islanders as well. Pierre Engvall up on the second line. Nelson Palmieri, he may play 11 minutes and then get benched. Simone Holmstrom on the top line. Not great. The one thing I will say, Seattle penalty kill does suck. So if you want to do some sort of Islanders power play stack, be my guest. But for the most part, I'm out on this game.
Yeah, I haven't seen a confirmed starter yet for Seattle. That's the one thing that worries me because Seattle's plays back-to-back. They have a game tomorrow in New Jersey. Grubauer is going to have to play one of them. Which one are they going to give to Grubauer? It might be tonight. That's what worries me because Grubauer has definitely not been good this year. Decord has been the far better goalie between them. He's the far better goalie between them last year as well. It is a very big drop off going from Decord to Grubauer. That's the one thing that's kind of giving me a little bit of interest in the Islanders here. I agree with you on the Seattle side. I think a two-man of Wright Bjorkstrand, Tolvanen, whatever. If you are playing super expensive lines elsewhere, that makes a lot of sense to me. On the Islanders side, I think I would go back to Horvat, Lee, and Holmstrom. They have a better top two stack percentage. Ownership is not that much higher. They're still only 14,100. They have been shooting hot, but they do play a lot of minutes. Even Holmstrom's getting upwards of 18 minutes at 18, 19 minutes. And they're probably going to face Philip Grubauer, who's just been literally one of the worst goalies in the NHL over the last season and a half. So that's why I have some interest in the Islanders, but not a ton of interest generally in this game. I do think, again, Seattle 3, if you want a two-man to put with your expensive stacks, I think that's kind of what I like best in this game, but I don't want to discount the Islanders just because it is going to be a great goaltender matchup for them.
Yeah. And just a quick point on Seattle 3. They'll be facing off against the Islanders bottom 6, and that Islanders bottom 6 is trash. So absolute trash. Not as bad as the Leafs, but trash. Had to throw that in there. It's probably not a true statement. Don't quote me. Columbus Blue Jackets, quote me. Columbus Blue Jackets, they 2.6 total heading into Edmonton. The Oilers have a 4 total. Zach Hyman's back. He's going to be on the top line. McDavid, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, 20,100, 27% top 2 stack, 23.4% projected ownership. You have to at least think about it, right? That Hyman's early season struggle were injury related after he missed some time with injuries. He struggled a little bit. That line still in over 100 minutes, creating a ton and still scoring a lot. The Monahan, Marchenko, Voronkov line has been sliding a bit defensively. This is an unbelievably good power play spot. Now, the Edmonton power play has been awful. By Edmonton standards, awful. Maybe Hyman back and healthy will help that. It's hard not to play Edmonton 1 here. Ottawa 1's $100 more, and you have to play Josh Norris. How often are you going to get this line fully correlated in an elite power play matchup at 20,100? This line last year, we were talking about playing them at 25,800. It's like a 20% discount-ish, probably a little bit more. So, I don't know, man. I know the ownership's high, and you'll see McDavid pushing 30% in some contests, maybe even higher. But this is as good as it gets for them. If you want to fade and see how Hyman is and that line goes off, they're going to be 23,000 in that game. So in single entry, they are very high in my short list. That second line is a little bit interesting, but Draisaitl and Podkolzin have had very good numbers so far this season, but this is a matchup where I want to prioritize the power play guys. So if you want to add in a Draisaitl and leave off one of Hyman, Nugent Hopkins, I think you can go that route. But this is one of those things where I have a hard time stacking Edmonton without McDavid here. So if you're not one of those people, I think Edmonton 2's fine just because Podkolzin and Draisaitl have been good together this season. Columbus 1, no one's playing them at 17,000. They still are creating a ton, and they are one of the better offensive lines in the league. For that reason, I think in MME, they are definitely playable. Getting over the field is extremely easy. At that price, though, it's hard to prioritize them in single entry. They are our boys, and we'll never forget what they did for us, but this is an Edmonton game for me.
Yeah. So I'd be worried about Hyman if he wasn't getting chances, right? Like Jason Robertson hasn't had a great start to the season. He hasn't been getting a lot of chances. Wyatt Johnston, until recently, again in Dallas, wasn't getting a ton of chances. I wrote about Zach Hyman at Elite Prospects last week, and here's what I noted is that in the prior 3 seasons, 26 times a top 6 forward averaged at least 1.5 expected goals per 60 minutes up to the Thanksgiving break. From that point onward, the average pace was just under 40 goals per 82 games for the rest of the season. And only one out of those 26 forwards, I think it was Joel Eriksson Ek 2 years ago, averaged under 1 goal per 60 minutes. Everybody else averaged, I think it was like a pace that would have been about 30 goals per 82 games from Thanksgiving onward. So like Zach Hyman was generating a ton and just ran cold. I think just ran cold for about 6 weeks. I really do like Edmonton one here. Yes, they are obviously coming with a lot of ownership. They're probably going to be the highest owned line on the night here. I do think you're fine if you're still worried about Hyman, like do a McDavid Draisaitl 2-man and add in Nugent Hopkins. Like that's obviously they're expensive, but it's not prohibitively expensive, right? Like that's a $22,300 stack. It's only it's 10% more than Ottawa won, but again, it's only 10% more than Ottawa won. You know what I mean? So I think you're fine to do that, especially where Draisaitl and Podkolzin have generally played pretty good together this year, pretty well together this year, and they're going to get a lot of depth matchups from Columbus, the second and third lines. I really do like Edmonton here. It's a great power play matchup. The Columbus penalty kill is bad. They're taking a lot of penalties still, 3.4 times shorthanded per game over the last 31 days. It's amongst the most in the league. I think it's the second most on the slate here tonight. I really do like the Edmonton power play, guys. Not a whole lot to say. The Columbus side is a little interesting because you're right about the defensive numbers, but the offensive numbers have still held up pretty well. Nobody is playing them. We know how bad Stuart Skinner's had a few good games now in a row. Maybe he's finally starting to turn it around. We know how bad he's been for about half his starts over the last season and a half. You know what I mean? The thing is at like $17K, they're not quite a mid-price stack. I do think there are other lines you can play in that range. Carolina, Buffalo, one of the Tampa lines, even Buffalo's not coming in with that much ownership. Like they'll be loaned as well. I think Columbus is more of an MME play for me here tonight. For me, this is an Edmonton game. I really do like their top stars here tonight.
Yeah. 20% more expensive than Ottawa, but still 10% cheaper than Colorado one going into Carolina.
Yeah, it's a fair point.
St. Louis Blues with a 3.4 total heading into Calgary. The Flames have a 2.9. I was wondering why the Blues had such a high total. There are people speculating that Pavel Buchnevich will be back tonight. He did not stay on the ice late with the scratches, which generally means he's going to be back in the lineup. The problem is this is the last game at lock, last game of the slate. It's like, where does he go? Like he could go on the top line with Thomas and Neighbors, or like I know it's a new coach, but the new coach Jim Montgomery could just be like, yeah, let's see what this Pavel Buchnevich 2C is about. We just don't know. He hasn't played with Jim Montgomery yet, so it's hard to say what I want to do with the Blues. Like I don't have a ton of interest as it is. If it's Thomas, Buchnevich, Kyrou, and we miss it, I'll be sad, but like I don't think it will be. It's hard to say, especially with this game being super late. It's one of those things like where you kind of hope like the lines aren't great and you miss it. If you are playing MME, I think you build with the most expensive possible St. Louis with a defenseman in the late games and kind of adjust to the news. I just don't know where, because like he hasn't played with this new coach yet. So it's just hard to say what to do with the Blues. On the Flame side, Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil, almost 15% projected. Like, it's the Islanders' flame conundrum, right? When they're chalk, it just feels awful. But like the Blues are awful. But Buchnevich is their best two-way winger. And if he's with Thomas, like that's going to be a respectable line. I don't know, man. But you would have to assume that if it's Thomas with Buchnevich, Backlund's going to go out against them. So like you're going to get Kadri, Huberdeau, Pospisil up against like Shen. So for that reason, I get it. But like, man, that ownership is just disgusting. So like, if it was for what I'm doing in single entry, I'm going to forget this game ever existed and hope it doesn't burn me. But I just have a very sinking feeling in my plums. I feel it down in my plums. Like this game is going to destroy us one way or the other.
Yeah, the tough thing with Buchnevich is that he's a $3,700 winger, right? So, you know, if he kicks Shen to because Buchnevich has played center at times this year. If he kicks Shen to the third line and you have Shen in your lineup, not only is Buch more expensive, it's a different position. You have to have him in the utility. And it's like, am I going to – and the thing is like, if you do like a Thomas, Buchnevich, Kyrou stack and they're not in, right, that's like a $15K line. There's no swap you can really go to, right? Because Columbus is 17,000 some. You won't be able to swap up to them. There's obviously
too.
Yeah, you'd have to do something like a Draisaitl, Podkolzin, whomever stack. You know, all the Calgary lines are under 12K. Like, there's no real swap to go to. If anything, I think you can one off Buchnevich, and then if he does, leave him in utility, and if he doesn't play, put in Neighbors, put in Shen, something like that. Full stacking St. Louis, it's just hard. Like, unless we get some sort of indication before warm up, and we'll definitely let people know in the Discord. It's hard to say what to do because it changes a lot for that team, especially with Dan Vladar in net, man. Like, I was actually kind of I was thinking about playing some cheap Blues here tonight to go with, you know, Colorado or Edmonton or something like that, or even Tampa Bay. With this wrinkle, I got to kind of rethink things. Honestly, I like the Coronado line here. I'm not really worried about any of the matchups from the Blues side. They have been playing well so far. 2.7 expected goals for, 1.7 against. You get 2 out of the 3 guys on the top power play, and they're all getting good minutes. Like at the low end, 17 minutes for Coronado. At the high end, 21 for Backlund. Coming in with half the ownership of that Kadri line. So they're over-owned, but it's not a wildly over-owned filler stack. I think it's the Sharon Govich line for me. And we will be paying attention to the news. If we do get an update about St. Louis, we'll definitely let everybody know in the Discord, because especially with Vladar and net, it's not a bad matchup, especially for any line that isn't going to be going out against Backlund.
Yeah. Let's talk about some defensemen. The 7K and up defensemen tonight are Makar, Werenski, Yossi, and Bouchard. I would put Bouchard 1, Yossi 2. The other guys are really expensive. Makar's in a really tough matchup. I also think Hedman at 6,700 is in a great spot. I think Weegar is fine at 6,500. Jake Sanderson. I think, obviously there's going to be some Buffalo defensemen moving up that are value on this slate, and I'll let Cliffy talk about that.
Yeah, I have Yossi, Werenski, Bouchard on this slate. I do think Makar is kind of interesting. I don't imagine he's going to get much ownership, especially if I was playing a bunch of lineups. I would have some interest. But yeah, I think Yossi, Werenski, and Bouchard would be on the expensive side. For the mid-price range, like Darnell Nurse is still getting good minutes, shooting, blocking, all that stuff. Shane Gostisbehere, again, I think it's a good power play matchup for Carolina. He's not super expensive. Lane Hudson was on the top power play for Montreal in the last game. He's like, his peripherals aren't great, but top power play and getting good minutes, like that's worth quite a bit to me for a defenseman that's only 4,100. I was going to say 3,100. If you want it, someone in that 5K range, I think Jake Wallman makes some sense here. Again, I'm not super concerned about the matchup against Tampa, and he can really stuff the shot and block sheets. There are some cheap defensemen worth playing here tonight, I think, though. Owen Power running the top power play unit certainly for Buffalo makes a lot of sense. You mentioned Bowen Byram earlier in the show. He's a left shot defenseman that is probably going to have to see a lot more minutes here tonight. And he'd already been playing a lot more minutes as it was. Caden Gooley for Montreal, I think, makes sense. Nashville does tend to shoot quite a bit. He might have to rack up the block shots. I don't know why Simon Edvinson's price isn't moving. The guy's 3,300, right?
Price has gone down.
He's cheaper. He's cheaper than Jacob Slavin, and he's averaging something like 50% more DK points per game than Slavin is. I like Edmondson. Emile Andre, power play time is fine. We'll keep an eye on St. Louis because if Justin Falk doesn't play again, I would have some interest in Philip Broberg here tonight. If you need a super cheap guy, Kevin Ball, Jacob Bryson, Ryan McDonough, Jalen Chatfield would probably be the guys. Oh, I do want to shout out real quick. I got a DM on Twitter from Yellowbird Marketing. He was the one that was talking to me about Vasilevsky. So I do want to shout him out because that's not something I came up with on my own.
Yeah. I always remember the Rangers announcers. It's like high blocker side he's been struggling with really badly for a while now. I mean, if your lower back is bothering you, this does not feel good. So I don't know. Anyway, goalies. Yay. All right. If you're spending up, I think the options for me are Sorokin and Spencer Knight, considering the other options are Andre Vasilevsky, Calvin Pickard, Dan Vladar. It's like in the expensive range, it's going to be Sorokin or Knight. Connor Hellebuck is 7,900 with their blue line in shambles. He'll see a bunch of extra volume because of that. I'm fine with it. It did not work out against the Blues, but I am willing to go back there. In the mid-range, like Scott Wedgwood, it's not a sexy click, but it is against Carolina. Colorado could win this game. I'm not saying they will, but for 7,600 in GPP only, I would consider giving it a click. Jordan Bennington, 7,200. Calgary creates a lot of quantity, not a lot of quality. If Decord's in net at 7,100, I'm interested. If it's Grubauer at 6,900, no, thank you. Tarasov and Vanacek are 6,800 and 6,700 respectively. I don't really like them, but if you are desperate for a cheap goalie, Vitek Vanacek at 6,700 at that price, if he sees some volume, even if he loses and gets you 10 DK points, I think that would help you. But I don't really want to go below Binnington unless Decord is starting.
Yeah, if Decord starts, he's probably one of my favorite goalies on the board. But again, I do think it's going to be Grubauer, so might be out of luck there. Montembeault and Binnington would be the two cheap goalies. I don't think Montreal's announced the goalie yet. I suspect it'll be Montembeault going 2-1 overtime win the other night. I don't know why they wouldn't go back to him. So, and then Binnington probably going to, again, I'll play almost any goalie facing Calgary. So do like Binnington here. If I'm going to pay up tonight, it's probably for one of Hellebuck or Spencer Knight. Haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do in net, but the four goalies I'm considering are Hellebuck, Knight, Binnington, and Montembeault.
Yep. We will be back tomorrow and Saturday to round out the week. So you have that to look forward to. Another show with elite beards coming at you. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
Go to Carolina. Been on a little bit of a streak lately. I'm going with Seth Jarvis.
My guy was on Carolina too. We been doing this together for 4 seasons now. Let's see. Backup plan. I should say Josh Norris just to piss 372 people off, but I'm not going to do that. I am going to go a stalwart favorite of ours, Brennan Hagel.
I like it. I like him tonight too.
Hogwarts favorite. Going Hermione Granger. We will be back. Tomorrow. Good luck, everybody, tonight. NFL Showdown tonight. That's why the GPPs are a little bit depressing, but nice little slate tomorrow. We'll see you then. Good luck, everybody.
Good luck tonight, everyone.